Welcome to Bedtime Stories. This is a bedtime story called Young Bristene. So once upon a time, there was a boy named Young Bristene, about 15 years old. And he grew up on his parents' farm. And young Bristene thought to himself, I'm going to go for a walk today, because that's what he felt like doing. He just felt like it. And then he was walking through the paddocks, and he was going through the grassy fields, and he was energetic. And then after about 2 kilometers, he came across an old man that was just sitting by himself in the grass. And he was holding a big bottle of olive oil, and he was just just guzzling it. And then Bristene said to this old man, "Hey, excuse me, why are you drinking that much olive oil?" And then the old man said, "I really just am used to it. I enjoy doing it." And then young Bristene said, "Well, that's interesting. I really think that's interesting." And then the old man said, do you have a jar of milk that I can borrow by any chance?" And then Bristene said, "I don't have any jars of milk." And then the old man said, "Well, that's fine, but I just would like to have my own personal space, so that'll be great." And then young Bristene, he was an understanding boy, so he said, "That's fine." And he kept going. And young Bristene, he could see these mountains in the background. And they had stormy weather like lightning bolts and thunder. And then there were crazy wild goats and wild chickens. And there was these birds swooping in from the sides, like vertically and diagonally. And he said, "I'm going to go there." And young Bristene, he got to these mountains and he said, "I still feel like exploring. I just really feel like it." So he kept walking. He just kept going. And he found himself in Antarctica. Young Bristene arrived in Antarctica. And then he just kept going. And he made himself a surfboard from out of nothing, because he was really a clever guy. And he was surfing through Antarctica, and he could see these frozen lakes and icebergs and everything. And then he just said to himself, "I really feel like reading a magazine." But he didn't have any magazines. So that was a tough situation. So he was like, "I'm going to leave Antarctica. It's quite cold as well, so I just really do need to leave." So he decided to go through Africa. He was experiencing these African jungles, and he was walking through, and he had snakes around his chest, and he was just throwing them off like this. And they were going, and he was throwing the snakes hundreds of meters because he was quite powerful, and he was scared because he wanted to be at home. And then he stepped on a lion's tail, and the lion turned around and looked at him like that. And then young Bristene bolted straight through the field, straight through the African jungles. And then he encountered this village, and this village said to him, "Excuse me, what is your name?" And then Bristene said, "My name is Bristene, but people call me young Bristene." And then they said, "We were expecting you." And then he said, "What do you mean?" And then they said, "Oh no, sorry, we weren't." And then he said, young Bristene said, "Well, I'm going to leave. I've got to go home." And then they said, "That is totally up to you." And he said, "Thank you." So he left. Anyways, young Bristene, he was walking home finally after this big adventure. And he walked past the man in the field of grass near his house that was drinking the olive oil. And the old man said, "What do you have for me? Do you have anything?" And then young Bristene said, "I've got a plastic bag in my pocket if you would want that." And then the old man said, "I would love that plastic bag." And then he said, "Well, you can have it." And then the old man said, "Thank you." And then he kept going. Young Bristene got home, and his mum said, "Welcome home, young Bristene. I'm really happy to have you home. You're a great child." And then young Bristene said, "Mum, thank you. You are also a really great mum. Really appreciate it." And then he said, "Now, Mum, I would really like you to cook me some mashed potato because I really enjoy that food and I'm quite hungry. And she said, that's fine. I can do that. And then he said, good. Then he said, I'm going to go to my room and I'm going to watch a Tom Hanks movie, Mum, because he's a great actor. And then she said, that is so true. He's really fantastic. So he went to his room and he watched the Tom Hanks movie while he was eating lots of dried apricots because he really enjoyed apricots. It's a great fruit. And then his mum came in with mashed potato. And she said, are you going to eat this mashed potato or have you had enough apricots? And he said, I don't even want that mashed potato anymore, Mum. And then he said, put it in the fridge. And she said, we don't have a fridge anymore. I sold it to a man in Europe. I had to. And he said, why did you have to? And she said, oh, I don't even know. Maybe I didn't have to. I don't know why I did that. And then young Bristene said, Mum, you've got to think about your decision making. I've just been to Antarctica for Christ's sake. But overall, he was a good kid, and that's the story of young Bristene. And I hope you have a really nice sleep. All right.